Authority of India, as this is in Santa Cruz Airport's funnel area. In exchange for the houses demolished, the developers will give an apartment free and also get commercial space for sale with which to finance the redevelopment. Unlike other builder-led projects where if 70% of slum residents agree to redevelopment, the rest have to go along, in Dharavi the government has not taken formal consent from the residents. Instead, it has tried to win them over by giving them 300 square feet apartments larger than what they currently own and more than the government norm of 269 square feet.
I'm sure that although we have done away with the 70%, this puts the onus on me to ensure that 100% of the people are taken along, because it's a redevelopment project. Unless people are moved out into a transit, you cannot start the first building of rehabilitation building.
There are skeptics like US-trained architect Chandrasekhar Prabhu who feels that people with wide income disparities cannot live together. He cites the example of other slum rehab projects in the city where the original owners have sold their flats to the richer neighbors to be converted into servant quarters. He fears that a remodeled Dharavi will not be suitable for certain occupations like papad making and that people will sell their flats and squat elsewhere.
The land on which the slum dweller squat will be brought to the table by the slum dweller. The person from the middle class who otherwise cannot afford to buy houses from the builder will bring in his capacity to pay at a reasonable price. The two can marry together. The funds from the middle class, those who need housing, needy people who need houses, and the land of the slum dweller can be put together. Slum dweller can get free houses and a corpus from which his maintenance could be free.
But they'll be brokered by the developer.
No, they need not be brokered by the developer.
But Mukesh Mehta says the idea is not only to move residents into better flats, but to preserve the existing ecosystem with its supply chains where one activity feeds the other. There will be elevated walkways, he says, with natural grass where hawkers can ply their pavement trade. In addition to providing better schooling and medical facilities, an attempt is also being made to improve skills in association with organizations like National Institute of Design. If people can earn better, they will have little incentive to sell and relocate.
First of all, there's so much workspace and it's very close to wherever they are living. For example, the ground floor would be workspace, but on the second or the third or the 10th floor, the slum dwellers could be living. So we are saying that they can get privacy for their children as well as family. Along with that, the businesses or the profession that they're in can also flourish.
Time for a break. When we return, how to prevent slums from coming up in the first place. Welcome back to State of Our Cities and to this episode on housing the urban poor. One of the things that Gautam Chatterjee, the Mahada official in charge of Dharavi redevelopment, did differently was involve civil society groups. As a result, NGOs like Sheila Patel's Spark have shed the initial opposition to the project. Spark was the NGO that was involved in the rehabilitation of 18,000 families that lived along Mumbai's railway tracks when the suburban train system was expanded. It wanted a survey of households and changes in bid documents, among other things. It also formed a group of citizens concerned about Dharavi to study ideas that have worked. This has no doubt delayed execution of the project, but it has all been for the good because falling property prices in the meantime have injected a greater sense of realism.
It would have been devastating if the project had already started and then there were money shortages. Just imagine what would have happened to the lives of all these people who are already taking a risk in allowing somebody to break their homes, now having to deal with the possibility that they can't return to the place where they were staying because the houses were demolished.
After a decade of tortuous negotiations, the Dharavi project is finally getting ready to being executed. But with elections approaching, politicians could complicate matters. They keep pushing people to demand more.
You have grassroots leadership that produces a lot of ferment. Sometimes it's genuine, it's worthwhile to listen to. But the other reality is that all housing and infrastructure projects are decadal. They don't happen in 1 or 2 years. So often it goes beyond one elected government. So it's very rare that you will have the party and the opposition agreeing to something so that they'll stay with that project.
Towards the end of February, shortlisted Dharavi redevelopers made a presentation of their plans. After technical evaluation, commercial bids will be invited and the project should get off the ground by the end of this calendar. But that won't be the end of the chapter for the nation, because of greater concern is how to prevent slums from coming up in the first place. The slump in the housing market has made private developers like DLF talk about affordable housing, though the very poor might not agree with the criterion of affordability. Partner them in bringing down cost by providing cheap land. Regulations and zoning laws could also be modified to incentivize mixed income housing, where the relatively well off could cross-subsidize those that are not. The Indira Awas Yojana has achieved its target of 60 lakh houses for the rural poor ahead of the deadline set. There is need for a similar scheme for the urban poor, which could measure